Hi there, Dr. Jones here. I'm a licensed therapist, and I finished watching Blue Note Therapy on Netflix, and I have some thoughts that I would like to share with you all. As someone who used to do couples therapy for a little while now, as someone who worked with people with personality disorders and who's done individual therapy for many years. So my first thought, and this is no disrespect to the therapist that was on that show. I'm sure she is a lovely person, but I've already done a post before on number one, where I think when you have shows that feature Black couples, you really do need a Black expert therapist. You really do need that. We don't see that enough on our shows. So that's number one. Number two, when you're doing couples therapy, I do not encourage couples therapy with someone who is not trained in personality disorders or pathological behaviors and that nature. Because when you're trained in that, I don't think it's a good idea. This is just me. This is Dr. Jones talking. And this is my opinion, professional, personal, whatever you want to call it. It's not a good idea to do therapy with someone who is a pathological liar. When you have someone that's living a double life, that's doing things, outside of the relationship, where they're completely living a different life, they're spending money, they're being selfish, they're being psychologically abusive to their partner. I think when you do that, that causes more harm than good. And when I saw it on the show, and you guys know I'm true to this, I'm not new to this. You can check my page, you can check past 8-9 years of my podcasts. When I saw it on the show, that seemed to be glazed over. Now, it's true, I wasn't there behind the screen, so I don't know if there were some things that were talked about that were edited out. But that was a serious concern and red flag for me when you have someone that's outright lying, that's outright making her pay for how they feel inferior. That is a huge disservice. And I think if we're not careful, people who are on the receiving end of that are going to experience more victimization over time. Number three, the other things that I didn't see addressed that I think could cause more harm for the future is psychological, emotional, and physical neglect. When you have a partner that is not there and not, there for important things like children, birth of children, just for whatever, those types of things, and that is not addressed, I think that also does a huge disservice to the person that is there. It also paints a picture of being neglected again in the couple's therapy session, right? If that's not addressed. If we're not addressing how my partner is gone or just picks up his shit and leaves while I've got children at home and is gone for all kinds of hours during the day and day after day after day after day, that's another problem where abuse is causing harm. And again, it's not physical abuse, so we're not necessarily putting hands on people. And so a lot of times that can get dismissed or minimized, but psychological abuse and emotional abuse and financial abuse was a huge one. And so I think those are things that you have to address. Otherwise, we're not really talking about the problems. We're just sort of glazing over it. And we're making a person that is experiencing that feeling like they should be stepping things up and maybe the romance or intimacy department, or, just sort of suffer through it and wait your turn and everything's going to pan out. We need to be talking about like, okay, I see that you guys have a problem as a couple, but right now it's not appropriate as a couple to address this because I'm concerned about the safety of one person in the relationship. So if we continue couples therapy. So you don't necessarily, it could be hit or miss. Some people feel like you don't have to. I wouldn't necessarily, this is me, I wouldn't necessarily continue it, but I would refer each person to their own individual therapist. Some people need to be empowered. They need to be they need to be validated, and they need to also be educated on exactly what is happening in the relationship. With couples therapy, couples therapy treats the problem of the couple. So sometimes what can happen is one person one person's concerns doesn't necessarily get addressed fully. But again, I go back to when you have components of abuse that are going on, even if they're emotional, they're financial, they're psychological, that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, that ends up being weaponized against a person who's experiencing that even more in the room. And people walk away feeling like therapy is bullshit and they don't want to deal with it anymore and la 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 la. Or the therapist is now aligning with the person who's treating me this way, and maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe I am expecting too much. But these are just some of my thoughts on the show. I'm not saying anybody's bad. I'm not trying to demonize or weaponize anybody, but there were some serious concerns on that show, some serious betrayals, and a lot of serious things that I felt like weren't addressed. And again, I wasn't there. So I recognize with television, things are edited out. But I also would have liked to have seen much more of an education on those things to the audience, as opposed to exercises on how we can maybe be a little bit more intimate and how we can say phrases to those people, to each other and things like that. That's really glossing over some of the major problems that I saw on the show. And again, I don't want to disrespect a therapist. It's really easy to, and I will acknowledge it's easy to critique when you're not the one doing it. But again, I didn't see any indications towards huge red flags on the show. And that's just like my pre-synopsis. So I left, I left the show feeling very disappointed and feeling like there was this huge disservice towards mainly the women on the show, and not holding some of what they were expressing in their partners. I felt like the male partners that they had grievances with weren't held accountable enough. And there were some behaviors in there that went by that weren't addressed at all, which was really surprising to me. It's like, okay, my partner hasn't been going to work for an extended period of time, and I'm paying 70% of the bill, but that partner has been getting dressed and pretending to go to work for some period of time, and that was like really glazed over. And I'm like, whoa, that is a huge thing to really just not even address at all. That is like, whoa, that's serious business there. What are we doing here? So it's just my thoughts on that show. I'm curious to hear what other people thought. But there were sometimes, I was laying in bed looking at it. There were sometimes I sat up out of my bed. I said, "What the hell?" It was kind of one of those moments. I'm like, "Are you kidding me with that?" And then it would just be like, "Okay, well, this is your homework, and we're just gonna do that." I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me! You gotta be kidding me!" So it was more of moments like that were like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I'm curious to know what you guys thought, and would love to have further discussion on this. It's called Blue Therapy on Netflix. Thanks so much.